The internet, honestly, it's hit or miss. Mine was really bad today. I heard you telling them, but
Yeah.
anyway.
It's us Lambton County, St. Clair County folks here, right?
All right, so it's 3:30. Do we want to get started, Gretchen?
Sure, sounds good to me.
Okay.
Share screen.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you again to everyone for joining us today for our session, January 19th. I can't believe we're almost halfway through January. That's crazy talk, over halfway, I guess. So
yeah,
ticking along and figuring it all out. So again, thank you for all you are doing. I am Alicia, one of the instructional coaches for the board, joined by my lovely partner in crime here, Gretchen, the household name, as I always say.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to turn off my camera right now because our internet is having issues right now too. So I'll have my mic on, but my video's off.
Sounds good. Okay, so before we get started today, we would like to do the land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that the land on which we are gathering today is part of the traditional territory of the Chippewa, Odawa, Potawatomi, and Delaware nations. Thank you for joining us. In today's session, we are going to kind of take an overall lens today. There's tons of sharing that's going to be happening today. We have representation from 4 different FDK teams, which we are really excited about. So today we're going to kind of think about how we can maintain that FDK program and that framework that we're so used to working within. We are going to talk about some ideas that work within the 4 frames, but we're also going to take the lens of documentation with communication of learning coming up with report cards. We really want to make sure that we can think about how we can gather data from this. So that's kind of what is going to happen today. And again, if at any point anyone has any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask. Okay. Okay. So I just thought we would start today with this kind of mindset shift that we talked about in a prior session, that instead of focusing on what we can't do and what we don't have that we're used to having in the classroom, we need to kind of shift and think about what we can do. The environment of our students being at home sometimes can be really beneficial in what we're doing. So just kind of keeping in mind flexibility and how we can use this home environment to help out our students.
Thinking about it from an asset lens, right? Like, it's such a cool thing to think about. And to visit, when I visit classes and I talk to teachers and I hear about the things that are happening, it's all really, really great stuff. So I think that's a really great way to put it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So again, just to kind of go over, obviously the 4 frames that everyone is so very used to. So belonging and contributing, problem solving and innovating, self-regulation and well-being, and those literacy and mathematical behaviors. So as difficult as it sometimes seems to kind of try to stick within those, we do know through talking with teachers that inquiry and some of those provocations that might be easy to kind of get started in class may not be as easy online. However, we can still think within those 4 frames when we are engaging in activities with our students and giving them that focus. Okay. And assessment obviously is a hot topic right now, especially with report cards coming up. So I was thinking about this, I kind of was going through the document, and it often says that children reveal their understanding in what they do, what they say, and how they represent it. And we as educators have to observe and listen and kind of ask those questions. So again, how do we gather information about student learning? Well, obviously we'd take observations, notes, videos, voice recordings. We can look at work samples. So in this virtual platform, Seesaw, in my kind of opinion, is something that is so powerful. We have the opportunity for students to take photos, to do drawing, to capture a video. And that voice recording tool is going to be a gem when we're listening to students show what they know. So that's kind of what we want to keep in mind today, and see if we can use that when we're talking about these activities.
And thinking about when we're in the classroom and the conversations that we have with students, you know, like that's where a lot of our observations come from, are those conversations with the students. So we have to kind of rethink that for right now, because we're not always able to have those conversations immediately in the moment. But using these seesaw tools is really, really effective this way.
Okay, so we wanted to kind of talk about well-being to start, and I don't know if Nicole made it in. I was trying to look to see if we could see your name.
I'm here.
Hi, Nicole. We're so glad you're here.
My laptop still never loaded, so I got on my iPad.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. So you want to tell us about this?
So when my teaching partner and I were collaborating, one of the things that came up was we're just kind of lacking in our well-being piece, our self-regulation and well-being piece. So we started this week focusing on the well-being piece, and we started doing a daily check-in and how they're feeling in the morning. And it really has been good for the children and us, because there are some things in the morning. You know, I had a little girl say, I'm shy this morning. I'm Piglet. I'm shy this morning. And we said, you know what, that's okay. And talked about that. And we knew that when we were doing some of our learning opportunities, we kind of just let her sit back a little bit. And we knew we were a little more cautious with her too. We had some friends that are very excited. They were Tigger and they wanted to just bounce around. So we could kind of be reactive to that as well. And in that questioning, we could have him go up and move and grab something. So I think that our responsiveness to the children, this has really helped this week. And then we even had a student who said they were eager or sad because they had a death in the family. So I think, you know, that it brings out those things and helps us be a little bit more cautious and understanding and compassionate to the children as well in doing this. So, and then I'm just kind of theming it. So today tomorrow we're doing penguins. We had penguins, but you can really put anything up there for a daily check-in and use that same thing every day. But I just keep it as part of my slides. I know there's options to put it in Seesaw as well. Seesaw has a bank of daily check-ins as well that you can put in and the kids can do them. We thought we would do it live, and then that way we have the kids talking, and some of the other kids even chime in on some of those conversations that are happening as well. So it just helps bring out some dialogue between the children as well.
I love this, and I think it's so important because when our students come in, when we're actually in class, oftentimes you're able to read their body language, or they come to you right away and they share, and they may be missing that opportunity. So by giving this kind of daily check-in and letting them check in with you might just be something that makes them feel a little bit better and gets their day started off on a positive note.
And then today, like, I think as you go, I learn as I go, right? Everybody learns. And today I added in, am I sleepy too? Because that's a big thing. If they're just, you can tell, right? They don't want to maybe get up and move because they're just having a really sleepy morning, or an I'm hungry as well. So I think these words can definitely be adapted to.
That's great. Okay.
So just to further that belonging, contributing, that whole well-being, making each other feel good in a virtual platform, we started doing a friend of the day this week. So we say what happens is this boy, the children bring something that they're proud of, something that makes them feel good, something they want to share with everybody. And it gives them that opportunity to shine and be celebrated, and to be heard as well, to have their voice heard. So then what we will do, we sing the little song to them, the I Like You song, and then all of them chime in, and they're learning the song and start to sing that together. And then we will have the student choose to go away for 5 minutes or be present. And what I do is I open up Seesaw and I edit. So I have that form right there I created in Google Docs. And then what I did was I put it into Seesaw. And then every morning when we have a student, I open up Seesaw in the activities and I just press edit on the activity. And then all together as a class, we create this letter for the student. And so it's their ideas of what they think that they are. You're so nice, or you're so kind. We think you are good at sharing, one of them said. We think you're good at helping, because they remember from their class, this one student was very helpful. And then we like your, whatever it is, the ideas they come up with. And then what I'll do right away, because you can assign an activity, I assign it and just select that student. So then it pops into their seesaw message, and then they get a little surprise from the friends in their class.
I love that. And how sweet that they get this nice little note from their peers, and still makes them feel like they are, you know, being acknowledged, even though we're virtual. I love that. Wondering if
Yeah,
any,
that's such
sorry,
a good
yeah, go
idea.
ahead.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, just saying that's such a good idea. And that just must make them feel so good, right? Like, and probably so excited. Do they know that they're the friend of the day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we also tell them that they can dress in their best if they wanted. So our little girl today, which is only our second day doing it, she had this beautiful dress on. So they can also dress their best if they want to, but it can also be a talent that they want to share. So just something that makes them feel good, makes them feel special, something they're just proud of or want to share.
I love it.
But I tell them, I tell them right at the end before I let them go for their break, and I notify the parents as well of who's going to be the next student of the day. So
Awesome.
So fun. It looks like Carissa there saying that they do friend of the day as well. Did you want anything to add to that, Carissa or Carrie, or anyone else who maybe does a friend of the day?
Yeah, any other ideas, right, to see where we can all bring this?
For sure.
We also do a petit prof, so the same thing, a small teacher in French every morning. And because we split our mornings into 2 groups, there's 2 petit profs, and they get to choose a song or a book to read with their group, with the class. So, and we also have to figure out who it is. So there'll be clues. So a picture of a lion, la 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 lion. So they have to say lion, L, and then solve the name basically. So
Oh, cute. I like that too, because there's that understanding of letters happening, and they have to gather all those clues to figure out who the student of the day is.
yeah. So this week we've done our sight words. So they have to read a sight word. So voici, they move, Madame will move the voici, and there'll be the letter. And then they have to read the next one, the sight word. She moves that, then there's the next letter, and so on and so forth.
Oh, that's a great idea too.
Very good. You've been so creative. Okay, anything else there? All right, let's move on to this one.
Okay, so something that we had done was, well, I have every day an exploration time, like a learn through play time. And I got the idea because we were watching some of the virtual teachers present in some of the previous sessions. And they said that one of them said they have open play time, like we do in our classroom. And I was really curious to see how that would work. So I started it off by having they can bring a toy, or they could bring us to their playroom and play. And it is a little bit awkward at first, but it is really neat what is happening. And the kids are playing or building structures, and you can ask them questions about it, like, oh, what kind of shapes are in your structures, or how are you making that stable? And then we can document as well, because we're trying to encourage them to talk to each other. So they completely unmute, and then they talk to each other during that exploration time too. So that's been a really neat little thing that we've been trying. This time here, what we did for this exploration time, it was over 2 days. So on one day, we had them go find some containers. So gave the parents a little heads up on some containers that could possibly be used. And then we let them go for 10 minutes, and they could either go outside on a little scavenger hunt, or outside or inside around their house to go find some treasures that they were going to collect. So we put it up to a maximum of 10 treasures. But they had to collect those treasures inside of the container that they were going to be using, so that they all fit inside that container. And then they brought them back, and we tested those items, and we talked about floating and sinking. And then what we did with those materials is we put them inside the containers, we filled it with water, and actually they also grouped their items from floating and sinking and took a picture of it and put it into Seesaw. But during that time, they were all doing it on camera at one time live. So we could also question and we could document some data from that as well. What they were curious about, some of their wonderings, some of their observations that were happening. So that was a good opportunity for that. And then we put the water in and we put them in the freezer and we let it sit for 2 days. And then when we came back, if you go to the next screen. So we actually had during explore and playtime, we had them just explore unmuted and they could talk about what was happening with their ice blocks. So we had them also give parents a heads up for some materials that they could potentially use for it. So we asked them to bring along some salt. We asked them to bring along some warm water, cold water, if there was a parent available, which is generally always the case with kindergarten, but they could bring a hairdryer. We talked about, we started it off with like talking about friction and rubbing the hands together and putting them on the ice and, what was happening to the ice. And then that just led to all different things happening. Some of them grabbed different tools to pick away at the ice block. And that was also another really good opportunity to be able to collect some data about what they were learning and what they were wondering, and just to help scaffold their thinking in different areas as well. And why some of their items, when they froze, they sunk down a little bit, but when they put them in the water, they were more buoyant. So that one was a really fun activity, actually.
I think that's it's so cool. I'm wondering if you have noticed if parents are kind of picking up on the questioning techniques that FDK teachers use. You know what I mean? Have you noticed if you're asking those questions to the kids, or if you are still, modeling that, or the ones doing most of the questioning?
I'm sure hoping they are starting to, but I don't know. I haven't, that's not something that I've picked up on. So I'm not sure, Gretchen, but I mean, that definitely would be the ideal, right, to have happen.
I think giving those prompts.
I think that would be something interesting to communicate to the parents too. Like, these are some questions that you could ask when we're participating in this kind of learning in our classroom, right?
So Nicole, there's a question there. Is there a reason that you chose this activity for inquiry? Like, did something prompt this, or what was your thinking behind it?
Well, we've been trying to learn about winter. So this just incorporated that idea of ice and freezing. And so that's where we brought that, but also just giving the opportunity for kids to go out and find treasures and incorporate materials that are around their house too. So trying to find some learning opportunities that can happen with the materials that they have right there around them as well.
Yeah, and I like that water is something that obviously in most homes is going to be something easily accessible as well. We would think a freezer, so just, really simple materials and lots of good learning. So these students, when you and your teaching partner were engaged in it, did one of you document or one of you ask questions? Like, how did that kind of assessment piece go there?
Yeah, we both did, actually. So we were both asking questions and documenting too. It's not always easy because you're trying to watch, but sometimes you just let that learning happen and give that silence and give those moments that you can watch them and write some stuff down too. So we both, and then we have, like, on our Seesaw, we have our class names, and then we actually have set up a second class, and we call it FDK, and we just have their initials, but that's where we document all of our data. So like you would normally document your information and put it on Seesaw and all the parents see it, we have a separate one that our parents don't see at all. So all of our observations go on there. And then when we're writing report cards, we have all of, like, we can make a note in the notes tool, or we can pop in a video in there or some pictures, and it just helps us have that visual when we're writing report cards, or that documentation right there too. So
Great.
That's what we found has been handy, but everybody's different.
Yeah, and again, those are opportunities that you can use when it does come to writing reports. So you have, maybe specific quotes, or you can go back and rewatch a video or something to kind of help bring that learning back. Good. Great, thanks, Nicole. Okay, so moving along, we have another FDK team with us from High Park. So I don't know, Carrie and Carissa, if you are there, if you wanted to share about this.
Carissa, are you going to do that or do you want me to?
Yeah, we both can. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, you go ahead.
The first one I see is our buffalo or a bison. So we were trying to find a way to do a virtual field trip that would excite the kids. So we found out there's a farm near us that has buffalo. So we excitedly drove our vehicles and went from afar and actually took some pictures of the buffaloes and tried to do a Bill Nye the Science Guy of buffaloes while we were there.
That's great.
And then
Go ahead.
And then we did, Ms. DeGuire's awesome. So she did little Google slides with some videos afterwards. And we did some different learning activities with the kids after where they were able to draw like a drawing activity to try to draw a buffalo. They were able to share on the Google Meet what they learned or what they were wondering. And we were able to document stuff from there.
I noticed when I was looking at your picture, my son was actually hovering over my shoulder. And in one of those pictures, it's hard to see, but there was a sign that it was something along the lines of like, don't get too close or something, or like keep your distance. And his question, he's in grade 3, but his question was, oh, I wonder why. So we did some investigating last night about your inquiry here in our own house. Did you get good inquiries or wonderings?
We always have on Wednesday, Chris and I kind of were talking about this too. On Wednesday, we always have an I Wonder Wednesday. So we wanted to keep our virtual classroom as much to the same as what we do in our classroom every day. So like we have Maker Monday where we do an instrument or we make something on Monday. Tuesday was always a book that we would do, but we haven't really mastered that one out yet with the virtual, but Wednesday is always I Wonder Wednesday. So we wanted to keep that routine pretty much the same for our friends so that they can anticipate kind of what's happening throughout the week because they were getting to know our schedule quite well. So this was just a fun way to start that inquiry too, right? I wonder about animals or buffaloes. And since this was right at our fingertips, we thought, why not take it outside and have some fun with it? So it's not kind of the same old sitting in our house and doing the same thing. So the kids really enjoyed it. And then we extended it and we did an art that afternoon with them when we hopped on again with them. And we were quite surprised at how well they did at like drawing the buffaloes and adding those little details that they had learned from Carissa's little video that she did too. So it was really interesting just to see their knowledge and what they've comprehended and what stuck with them and what was interesting to them. And, you know, one little boy came out with a bison too. We thought they were all going to say buffaloes, right? And he knew that word. So he obviously had a little bit of information about that too. So it was probably one of our number one days, I think, that we had with our inquiry with our little kitties. So it was a lot of fun for everybody.
And I think too, like inquiries just look a little bit different. So obviously you guys had kind of went out ahead of time. So your picture that you provide to them in your face-to-face, your online, you have already done and you've already experienced that. And giving them these inquiries or provocations might look a little bit different online than they would face-to-face, but they still promote so much. And I am sure there was tons of excitement to go along with this one.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good day.
And I really like this too, because it really is that focusing on what you can do, right? That you can do. And even, you know, if you're around your house or your yard or something, we all have some things in our houses or our yards that might be unique to us, right? Like, or really interesting, or your hobbies or whatever too, right? Like if you're really into house plants or music, you know, those are things that you can share with your students. So I think that this really illustrates that, you know, you went on your cool field trip and you talk to the students about these buffalo or these bison. So I think this is awesome.
Mind you, I feel like we had the same interest level, like you're saying, when we looked at footprints in our yard. The kids were, I'm like, we're going to go out in the backyard and see what footprints are in Mrs. Hoole's backyard. And they were just as intrigued to see me jump on the trampoline or just show some of my dog's footprints as the buffaloes. I think we were expecting a little more excitement with the buffaloes, but I think they just like touring anything, really.
Yeah, and I think that's it too. Like they get to see their teacher's house, right, or their teacher's yard. You know, I'm sure that they just love any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It makes us more human to them, right? They can connect with us a little bit more. Like when your dog's sitting in the back and they have a dog, there's another whole conversation that can take place. So,
for sure, and all of those things bring all that learning to the surface, and all of that engagement, and all of the kids making connections and seeing how they're similar and different to their friends and their peers, their teachers. All of that can be used towards the documentation with the 4 frames. So keeping it simple is sometimes just as easy. Now, what about the picture on the right there?
On the right, it focuses on our Maker Monday. So we'll either do like a music invitation with making something, or a STEM focus to build something. And usually there's a read aloud that kind of starts the conversation going. So we had If I Built a House, which was this boy that had all this imagination of what his cool house would look like. And then it has some of the students then got to make their own version of the coolest house ever. So we had kids that gave us either through voice, or they did a little bit of writing, and then they showed the houses that they created using building materials. And then that was a way that we were able to get some like rich documentation on like the problem solving and innovating piece, which was awesome. And the kids were super excited to share. We had some voice where one boy, he shared every single room and how he made it for him. And there was really neat things in each one, even the bathroom. He made like a little Lego bathroom and everything. And they made it unique for them. So it was really neat that way. And sometimes we get to connect it with our science too on Wednesday. So like for this week, we have where we're going to get to make a volcano, which obviously every kid's dream is to do the baking soda and vinegar, and a little tornado. And then they get to their kind of STEM with that is doing like the floor is lava game and get to build their own little obstacles. So we try to kind of sometimes connect our STEM with our science that we'll do on I Wonder. So that's this week's focus, and we'll see if we have some sweet obstacle I lava games.
So much fun. Awesome. Any questions or anything to add there for Chris and Carrie?
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
So when you're choosing to do your STEM challenges or like your building projects or whatever, are you nervous, or are you ever worried that they don't have the equipment or the materials needed for, like, I'm always nervous about putting that on to the parents about, you know, worrying on that they don't have the right things. Are you ever nervous about that, or how do you choose, or how do you know what to ask or what to require?
Yes, we find we leave it really open-ended. So even for like a lot of our STEM building, it could be they could use anything they have in their house, not just like if they don't have Lego or they don't have Duplo, then we were saying like you could even build it using snow outside when you're on outdoor, or you could use like loose parts that you might have in your house. So like you could even use the rocks outside. But when it comes to science, yeah, we find that exactly what you're saying is that I'm a little bit of a nerd with science experiments, and I really like to do a lot of them, but I have to tone it down to make sure it's something that they have in their house. So like for our tornado one we're going to do on Wednesday, we were like, okay, most people have a water bottle that they could use, and they could use, so we made it open-ended. You could use anything that could go in water, whether it be little loose particles of sand, and everyone would have that, or sparkles, or anything that could go inside your water. So we were trying to make science experiments super simple, so then they would have the materials at home, because it is true, our families too, we can't do like we see all these amazing things like lava lamps and all these cool science experiments online, and our families will not have those materials, or it will definitely stress our families out to provide those. So we try to keep it as simple as possible.
And we always really talk about it's okay to watch. and it's okay to listen and to learn and to try it later on. Like sometimes I just won't show up with any materials either, so that they know that they're not the only one that maybe doesn't have the materials. Just so that, you're right, Diana, where we can just like, we got to keep it open-ended and we got to keep it easy. We had an activity that went out the other day with a maze, and they were supposed to build a maze out of like whatever they had in their house. And this one little gaffer was just, he had a piece of paper. So his maze was itty bitty on a, like an 8x11 piece of paper. And he has a little car and he went through his maze that way. So it's amazing to me how they can start to think themselves outside the box and some simple materials that they can use within their house, right? Like shoes or because we know, or socks or stuff like that, that they can kind of start to think of those materials. We always give them those little prompters too, like, you know, it doesn't always have to be out of toys or materials. It can be out of these kind of things too. So, but yeah, we always, Chris and I always talk about that before we set the assignment out for the science, just to make sure that we're not setting anybody up for failure, because you hate to see their little faces when they don't have what they need.
And we had a little girl just this week that you could tell she didn't have materials that the other kids were having. And we were like, oh, that's just great that you could be one of our main observers and see what happens and see what you notice from everybody's experiment. And she was noticing things that no one else was, because they were so busy doing this little marker in the water experiment and seeing their little marker guy move. And she was the one that was like, oh, well, I noticed that the people that use black marker works better than people that use a different color. And she was noticing some things. So we were like, see, like even observing, sometimes you notice things more than even doing the experiment yourself. So we were trying to encourage that for some kids that might not have a parent there to help them out a little bit.
Okay. No, those all sound like great ideas. And I love the idea about the observer. That makes a lot of sense. Can I just ask you one more question?
Yeah.
How do you fit it into your, like, if you have your you have your meet in the morning where you would have maybe your entry, that sort of thing, and what Nicole was saying about, you know, the self-regulation piece, how do you fit those science experiments into your day? Do you do like a separate meet, or do you, okay.
Yeah,
So
we
yeah,
always go back on, Diana, at like 12 o'clock with those. Those are like our afternoon kind of activities, because we find that our numbers go a little bit lower in the afternoon with our kiddies.
Right.
So we try and keep something exciting and fun that they might want to come back and join in on. So we break for lunch, and then when we hop back on, we always start with that fun activity.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's what we do as well for our science, is we do it in the afternoon, kind of a drawback for them to pull them back into class.
Awesome. Great. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Lots of great ideas there. Okay, Tressa and Molly, are you out there?
Yeah, we are. Well, Molly's supposed to be here, but she's been having computer problems too. So we'll see if she actually gets on.
That's okay.
So what we've been doing is similar. We do all of our kind of more hands-on exciting things in the afternoon. One of the things that happened is we've been doing these STEM explorations. So we've been doing different things. So we had them build a musical instrument, and it was just, you know, make your own. We watched a quick video on a couple different things. We had them bring supplies. And one of the things Molly and I are really wanting to make sure is we give them lots of ideas on things. And when someone comes up with something totally different we didn't think of a supply to use, we really reward them. Or if someone shows up without something, we kind of start brainstorming how we can solve it that makes it, because we have some kids who are being babysat by older siblings or by high school students that are still trying to do work. So it's hard for them to kind of be engaged. But our biggest thing is that we go through this STEM exploration, where this one is where we decide to build a musical instrument. So they have their supplies. And then in Seesaw, we have a design log that we have them complete. Now we take them through the process in the actual meet. And we tell the parents, you know, we're doing this here, so you don't necessarily have to do it there. So we start talking about, like, you know, what supplies you're going to use, how you're going to kind of do it, draw your picture. Let's try labeling it. So we're having all those kind of discussions about words and how to do that kind of things. Then they go and build. And as they're building, we're having that conversation like, how did you get that to work? Or that looks like that's not working. What are you going to do there? So that's where we're also writing down and documenting as we go. But there's sometimes children who decide not to actually do the work in the actual moment. So they jump off and then they just plop it into Seesaw. And our biggest thing with our parents is to make them have those, put on that microphone and talk about the item. So they talk about it to us. They like talk about what challenges. We have one little boy who likes to come on and say, I have no challenges. It was perfect. And every time, even we just kind of, his mom now lets him kind of keep talking. And then he talks himself into a problem or something that didn't work. So he'll come up with different things along that line. So we started with this. And the reason we started with this was because we wanted to move to our next thing. Can you move to the next slide?
Sure.
So our next slide was we wanted everyone to be able to be like Jimmy Fallon and play a toy instrument for music. So we wanted to make sure they had one, mostly because I don't have a toy instrument in my house. So we made them all. And then we came back to do this. And we watched the video where they all play the toy instruments. And then we worked on doing this where the kids talked about, like, they brought in, some kids brought in their own guitars, some kids brought in, one child had a bagpipe horn. I know. And so he explained that. So they were bringing in stuff that was part of their musical knowledge at home and explaining it to us, talking about it. And then there were those that were using what they made. So they were feeling that they were bringing and contributing to it. So it was kind of creating a sense of self. And I taught them this song, and this is something I found just on, it was on Seesaw on someone else's, and I combined it into what I wanted it to make. And it's just, if you're happy, if you know it, play it loudly, softly, quietly. But our biggest thing was teaching them how to stop and start. So, you know, this was, you can play, this is where you can stop. And they loved it. I believe you have a clip, don't you, Alicia?
We do. And I was going to say, Tressa, so you guys built the instruments. You talked about it. And one thing when I watched this video, and I'm hoping that we can get it to load, but one thing I noticed is how, like, those hand signals, like that you use, we can play, and then you need to stop. And the kids were really, really good with it. So
it was amazing how much they actually had no problem following that. Like, what you're actually watching is our practice. Our real one, and this is hilarious, is that during our real performance, my principal decided to jump in to see our meet and quickly jumped out because it was loud and there was all kinds of stuff going on. But our real one is, unfortunately, we couldn't get it to transfer into, it was a screenshot or that, so we couldn't figure out how to do it, to clip it down to make it a small one. So that's why we sent this one instead.
Perfect. Let's see if we can get it to play here. It's so cute.
If You're Happy and You Know It, performed by FDK1 Toy Instrument Band.
If you're happy and you know it, and you want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, say it back.
So cute. And I just love
Awesome.
how they worked together and, like, they created this great song with their musical instruments that they created, and they got to play it and be loud, and just, it's so, so great.
And we invited not just the kids with their instruments, because they made more than one. We had them invite their family members. You can't see the one, but there's a little boy playing his instrument and his mom's playing the piano, and they're running around the house as they're playing, like running around the living room playing. And there's multiple people. It's not just one person in the room playing. There's more than one child playing and things like that. So it just kind of created like a family kind of performance. And then we attach this to Seesaw. So if you didn't get to do this in classroom, then you could still do it at home with your family members. So there was an actual activity there, and then they would videotape it or take a selfie of their band, and then we could comment on that and have a discussion with them there.
Awesome. So much fun. Thank you so much for sharing that. I was even thinking, in my house, I feel like my kids would grab like pots and pans and just bang them together. So
exactly. And that's one of the things we said, if you didn't have a toy instrument, that grabbing a pot with a spoon would work, or even filling water into glasses and doing that
Great.
was different things, but most of them had their instrument from before.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing.
If
Okay. Casey, are you out there?
I am. Can you hear me?
You sure can.
Awesome. Okay. So I am in charge of the afternoons. I work with Nicole. So a lot of the times we plan together, and I've kind of taken on, I guess, more of the math role in the afternoon, and she's got a lot of the language in the morning, but we kind of interweave different parts with different things. So we're kind of both doing it all, but I kind of explored math a little bit more than the language aspect that she did. But so we started actually doing some subitizing and counting like we would in the classroom. So we have been using the subitizing assessment and placing kids since the starting of the year and tracking their movement throughout. And we use the slide decks in the classroom and different pieces and portions from the Trajectory website. So it's like, how can I figure out a way to incorporate this to online learning? And it's to the point where like the kids expect it, like, oh, when are we going to subitize? When do we get to do that? When are we going to do our counting? So I wanted to have that consistency with them. So we kind of have a theme, like Nicole said, every day, and we try and stick to that theme so it's consistent all the way through for the kids. So depending on what we're doing that day, theme-wise, I create a kind of slideshow based off of this subitizing slide deck. And we work on visually subitizing. So I quickly bring up an image of, for example, this one's dinosaurs, and they have to subitize how many dinosaurs are there. And then they show it using their fingers on their screen. And then, or they can unmute and shout it out too. It's really up to them and their comfort level. And then we have some sort of movement. So we have to do 3 of something, and we give that to the kids as a choice. So I've been kind of taking like a movement math lens, just with the whole, kids trying to sit in front of a screen for more than, 5 minutes is difficult. So at least we have that movement piece to keep them engaged and keep their bodies moving. But each kind of day of our week, I do something different. So subitizing visually would be through these like cards with different images on it that they would look at the screen to subitize, and then we'd move. That card I display on the screen, and the kids can kind of pick what they're going to do. But then one of the other days, you can move to the next slide if you want. Oh, this is just a follow-up activity on Seesaw that you could also post to kind of connect to that subitizing, as well as that theme that you have with the kiddos as well. You can go to the next slide.
Casey, I'm wondering, is that Seesaw activity, that subitizing one, is it shared in the library, the community library, or?
I will do that for sure. I know I posted the link, I think somewhere in the slide deck, but I can definitely throw that into the community library, and then you can also tailor it. So like in this case, our theme was dinosaurs that day. So it was me, my Bitmoji on a velociraptor, and they had to subitize their way through the maze to get me to the volcano, which was V was our letter of the day. So it had that connection for the kids there. But yeah, I can throw it in there and you can kind of make it your own.
Great, thank you.
So along with that kind of subitizing theme, so on Mondays, usually we do visual subitizing. On Tuesdays, we'll do hearing, so that auditory subitizing. And I pulled this, actually, this activity was adapted through the Trajectory learning site. So what I essentially do, depending on the theme, so you can see the one is like water, and then the other one's popcorn, which was today, popcorn, and a snack or a drink or something like that. And I do audio clips, and they have to listen and count what they are hearing. So this was something that we tried for the first time last week, and it was actually really cool. The kids loved it, but you can actually do different arrangements here as well. So you can kind of space out the sounds to make different arrangements. So the slurping one, the video with the popcorn the drink, it kind of goes 5 slurps and then it pauses and then it does 4 more slurps, and then the kids have to listen and then subitize, well, I know 5 and 4 conceptually, I can put those together. That's 9. So yeah.
So did you record those yourself, or how did you?
Yes. Yeah. So I can't think of the name of the website right now, but I just essentially search up different sound effects depending on the theme. And then I use the Clips app and I throw in our Bitmoji and then I record it through that. And I present, like, we do this all together as a class. So it's really cute because the second portion of this is we're working on our representation of numbers in different ways that we may see visually and have to subitize those numbers. So if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so as they're kind of, they're listening for that number, their next step is to represent that number in a multiple of ways. So they can, some of them just use their fingers on the screen, which is totally fine. Others have paper in a dry erase board in front of them, and they're representing that number in a 10 frame in tallies, and then they're working on their number form as well. And then we kind of take it up together and they all show it on their screen, the piece of paper that they're working on. So we're kind of getting that representing the number in a variety of ways as well. So we're working towards subitizing numbers in that variety of ways. So that we can quickly recognize them in a variety of representations, which kind of connects back with that maze as well, because there's all kinds of different representations of numbers that they have to quickly subitize. So it's fingers, 10 frames, tallies, and then we haven't gotten to Reckon Recs yet, but I'm hoping to adapt that into here as well, and what that might look like on a Reckon Rec.
That's awesome. And giving the kids the opportunity to kind of show it in those different ways will help to build that flexibility with number.
Yeah.
And I like that you did it, you know, visually you can see those images, but also listening, that because that's a whole nother skill for kids to be able, that's kind of that simultaneity of trying to do multiple things at once. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, we really wanted to pull in that sensory piece too. For the kiddos. But again, so after we would do this, we would represent that number. Again, I would pull up like some sort of activity card and they would pick a movement to just get them up and moving and away from the screen for a couple seconds and then regroup and come back. We'll do another one. So they've actually gotten into a wonderful routine of like, they know we pick, we do it, we come back, my eyes have to be on the screen and my ears are ready to listen. Like they're very good at kind of keeping that routine now too. I think the next slide is just an example of how you might do this in Seesaw. So again, you could just take those clips videos, drop them into your Google Drive, and then share it as a link, and then just share that slide where they can represent numbers in a variety of ways. So that's an option to do it whole group, but then you can also get that documentation, that concrete documentation as well if you wanted it.
Wonderful. Any questions or any comments or any wonderings for Casey? I know we're getting short on time and we don't want to keep you too long. We have so much more to share, but we can also continue sharing depending on how this goes. So we just want to make sure that anyone who has any questions we can answer. Okay, Gretchen, what do you think? Do you want to try to do one more, or should we stop here? We're at 4:19. We just want to make sure we're valuing your time.
We could go one more. I think that
okay.
Our numbers are still good. It doesn't look like anybody's left us yet. So I think that let's try one more.
Okay.
I'll make it quick.
I love the sharing. I just love all the sharing. I could just listen to this for, you know.
We could stay here all day. Okay, Casey.
Okay, so this one just kind of lends into that STEM portion as well. So in this case, this was a pirate ship building activity that we did remotely together, so as a whole group. So the students, we asked them to find materials from around their home to use in building their very own pirate ship. So that week we had a pirate theme. And before we did this, we had a storybook. You can kind of see it, Goldbeard's Treasure, that we read together. And, you know, one of the characters was a builder and a DIYer specialist. And so we kind of connected to that and the fact that they were going to be creators as well. And so we asked them to kind of bring different materials from their home. It could be anything. We gave them some examples, but for the most part, like, the kids were super creative in what they brought back and what they had access to. So while we were building together, students were allowed to discuss with one another during the building process, and they were kind of exchanging and sharing ideas. They were communicating what they liked about their friend's boat. They gave each other suggestions and ideas. And then, so the day before, they made flags out of like shapes. We connected it to the math, the shapes, and then they actually ended up taking these flags and putting them on their final boat. And then they were also asked to give their boat a name, and then they had to justify why they named it that. And then at the end of it, actually, I think we did it the next day just because some of the kids wanted a little more time to work on it. We did kind of like a show and tell. So each student was given the opportunity to talk about their final boat with their peers, and they had a chance to explain like each feature and what materials they made it out of, and just kind of open up that floor for other kiddos to kind of ask them questions as well. So while we were doing this, you know, the documentation could have spanned all 4 frames, like just the amount of things that were invested in this, but just some of the questions that my partner and I kind of had in mind as we were watching this. Are they using creative thinking to create their boat out of the materials they had available to them? Do they use their imagination to use basic materials to create a pirate ship? So some were making it out of like, you know, just a box and some construction paper and paint, and they came up with this elaborate piece. So it was really cute to see. Are they promoting the development of relationships as they kind of help one another and give feedback to each other while they're building? Trying to think of different, so those were all kind of like belonging and contributing. So I guess, are they interacting with others to problem solve together in order to use their materials? I guess, what else did we talked about, like there's so many different things that we could have pulled from, and it was just, we had a lot of documentation off of this, and the kids had an absolute blast doing it. And I know some of them, they still have them at home, and you know, they won't let family throw it out, it has to stay. And it was really cute to just kind of step back and let them take the lead. And the best thing about it was all based on materials that they had access to. So we had all kinds of things from, you know, toilet paper tubes, bottles, empty glove boxes, dowels, construction paper, the whole works. And then they actually connected some of the language that they had, like they brought from the story to the boat. So like they were talking about, you know, we have to have a plank because a pirate boat has a plank because sometimes they make people walk off of it. So make sure that you include a plank. And it was really cute just to sit back and let them take the reins as a whole group building together.
And I think too, just giving them the opportunity to kind of, build their structure, build that boat, and then it goes off in so many different directions that the opportunities are endless for what you could do with it. And again, using Seesaw as that tool, if you didn't get a chance to hear from that child in the meet, for example, we can use Seesaw to get them to share their thinking and gather that documentation.
Oh, for sure.
So
the next kind of activity, it was similar where they had access. If you just can go to the next slide. I'll just go quick. But it was kind of the same concept. Whatever you have at home, let's build a spaceship together. But instead of doing it whole group, this was an asynchronous activity. So they did it at home and then they brought it the next day and they show and telled what they made. So just two kind of different ways that you could incorporate that STEAM piece.
And that local connection of Chris Hadfield there and that darkest darker cloud, which is really great.
That is awesome. And have you shared this with the district and school Seesaw community?
I definitely will.
Great, thank you. I think that these are all really awesome things to share, and showing everybody too that how they worked in your classroom and that, you know, that they were successful lessons in your room. You know, that's awesome. And the amount of documentation that you're able to get from these activities is so great too. So thank you so much.
Casey, we had a question in the chat just before we kind of sign off about the movement cards and where you got those.
For the movement math, that movement card, I actually purchased a TPT resource. Her name is the Active Educator, and that's where I kind of pull some things from, but I did get that from her, and hers was more letter based, but I adapted it so that I could use it for math as well.
Awesome. Okay. We have so much more that we could have shared. There are other educators here that had some ideas. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Depending on how we move forward in the next couple weeks, we may be back with you possibly next Tuesday. We don't know. So we'll keep you posted, and if there's anything, or if you want to reach out to Gretchen or myself, or I'm sure any of the educators who shared today, please feel free.
Yeah, and I just want to do a little plug here. This week and next week, I've got things booked, but I'm able to join classes. I've been doing read alouds, Ojibwe lessons. I have Seesaw activities put into the bank. So if you want me to join, or Alicia too, Alicia joins classes too, send us an email and we would love to join your class, you know, to share math talks or read alouds or Ojibwe words or anything. So yeah, so thanks so much everybody for joining us today. And thanks so much to everybody for sharing. It was awesome. I love hearing everything that's working in the classrooms and all the good stuff that everyone's doing.
Thanks everyone. Enjoy your Tuesday evening.
Yes, we'll see you later.